Some other ecologists have argued that assembly rules are constraints. They act as filters. I mentioned the soil and the germinating of the poison parsnip, for example. If you can't sprout in that kind of soil, whether it's too acidic or too alkaline, too wet, too dry, too much organic matter, not enough organic matter, if you can't sprout in that particular medium, that acts as a filter, and it filters you out of the system. And so a lot of discussion within ecological restoration communities is based around ecological filters. We'll talk quite a bit about filters tonight. And J. Vasto Wilson defined assembly rules as ecological restrictions on the observed patterns of species, the presence or abundance that are based on the presence or abundance of one or more other species or groups of species. How do you like that? Memorize that and say it twice. Assembly rules arise from the interactions between all the living components of a system, and they're also interact with the non-living parts of the system. And I'm just going to zip right through here. Is if we know how plant communities assemble themselves, what conditions they need, we can predict where a given system will go on its own if we leave it alone, and we can figure out if there are certain filters along the way. We can figure out that if this is the major restriction, for example, if the major restriction in an agricultural field is compaction, 8 inches down from a plow pan from being plowed for 60 years, we know that if we remove that filter right there, we can have a whole bunch of different other alternative stable states that can develop out of that. So to identify the filters, we can now identify these leverage points where we can make the least amount of input for the most amount of change. So all this research leads to some of the questions. Do disturbed sites repair themselves and return to their pre-disturbance state, or do historical events along the way produce a variety of alternative stable states? And part of what I showed a bunch of weeks ago, I showed a lot more slides with this. This was Prospect Hill at the Harvard community, I think it's a Harvard Community Forest in Massachusetts after the hurricane of 1938. It was once upon a time chestnut, oak, hickory that was cleared for settlement. It was farmed for 100 years or so, and then as the soil got played out, because it's thin, rocky soil, it all grew up to pine, went through a phase of grassland, then it went through a phase of blackberries and raspberries and pine, and then all the pines, young pines, blew down in the hurricane of 1938.